How I trained my brain to think in English. Hi, my name is Lena Parker. I'm 22 years old and I live in San Diego, California. I'm a university student studying marketing, but there's something about me that might surprise you. I've struggled with English for years. Not just speaking English, but thinking in English. You might wonder, Lena, aren't you in the US? Don't you speak English every day? Yes, I do. But speaking English and thinking in English are two different things. Let me tell you my story. My struggle with thinking in English. I grew up in a multilingual home. My mom is from France, and my dad is American. At home, we mostly spoke French. Even though I learned English in school, my brain always thought in French first. If someone asked, "How was your weekend?" my brain would first think, "Comment était ton weekend?" Then I'd translate it to English and say, "My weekend was good." This small habit made my English slow. Conversations felt exhausting. I needed a few extra seconds to respond. By the time I was ready to speak, the conversation had already moved on. I realized this habit was holding me back. If I wanted to speak fluently, I had to stop thinking in French. I had to start thinking in English. The moment I knew I had a problem, it became clear in my marketing class. My professor asked a question, and my classmates answered quickly. But I sat there, translating in my head. I understood the question. I knew the answer. But by the time I was ready to speak, someone else had already answered. One day, my professor called on me. I froze. My mind was busy translating. I could feel my classmates staring at me. After a long pause, I finally spoke. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't natural either. After class, my friend Jake noticed my frustration. "Lena, you know English. What's stopping you?" he asked. "I always think in French first," I admitted. He laughed. "That's your problem. You need to stop translating and start thinking in English." He was right. But how? Step 1. Changing my environment. Even though I lived in the US, my world was still in French. My phone was in French. My Netflix shows? Mostly in French. Even my to-do lists were in French. So I made a decision. I would switch everything to English. Changed my phone settings. I started watching shows in English without subtitles. I listened to English podcasts. I even set reminders in English on my phone. At first, it felt strange. But slowly, my brain started adjusting. Step 2. Talking to myself in English. One afternoon, I was walking home when I had an idea. I would talk to myself in English. Not out loud. I didn't want people to think I was crazy. But in my head, I started narrating my day. Instead of thinking, "Je vais faire mes devoirs quand je rentre," I forced myself to think, I'm going to do my homework when I get home. At first I had to concentrate, but after a few days, it became natural. My brain started processing things in English. Step 3. Keeping it simple, one big problem. My French thoughts were too complicated. If I tried to translate them word for word, they didn't always make sense in English. So I started using short, simple English sentences. For example, instead of thinking, J'espère qu'il ne pleuvra. Pas parce que je dois aller au magasin, I thought. I hope it doesn't rain later. I need to go to the store. Short, simple, direct. Step 4. Describing everything in English, another trick. I started describing what I saw. At a coffee shop, I looked around and thought, the barista is making coffee. That man is reading a book. This coffee smells good. At first it was slow, but over time my brain started doing it automatically. Step 5. Speaking without fear. One of the biggest things that slowed me down? Fear of making mistakes. I always worried about grammar. But then I remembered something my English professor said. Even native speakers make mistakes. She was right. I had heard my American friends say, me and my friend went to the store. That's not grammatically correct, but people still say it. I realized fluency is more important than perfection, so I started speaking without overthinking, and something amazing happened. I became more confident. The turning point, a few months. Later, something changed. I was in a group discussion in class. The professor asked a question, and before I even realized it, I answered. No translating. No hesitation. It felt natural. Automatic. The biggest test? Public speaking. Later, I had to give a presentation in front of my entire class. I was nervous. I worried that under pressure my brain would switch back to French, so I prepared differently. Instead of writing my speech in French and translating it, I wrote it directly in English. I practiced out loud. I recorded myself. I listened back. On the day of the presentation, I took a deep breath, and I spoke. No translating, no fear. The words came naturally. That's when I knew. I wasn't just speaking English. I was thinking in English. Overcoming challenges. Of course, the journey wasn't perfect. Sometimes, when I was tired, my brain wanted to go back to French. And some words, they still stumped me. So I kept a notebook. Whenever I struggled with a word, I wrote it down. Every night before bed, I reviewed my list. Little by little, those words became part of my thoughts. Another challenge? talking to fast native speakers. At first, it was overwhelming, but I developed a strategy. Instead of focusing on every word, I focused on the meaning. For example, if someone said, "Hey, wanna grab a bite?" I didn't stop and think, "What does grab a bite mean?" I just understood. They were inviting me to eat. This helped me stop overanalyzing and just go with the flow. The moment I knew I had a problem, continued. One day, my professor called on me. I froze. I knew the answer, but my brain was busy translating. I could feel my classmates watching me, waiting. After what felt like forever, I finally spoke. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't natural either. After class, my friend Jake noticed my frustration. "Lena, you know English. What's stopping you?" he asked. I sighed. "I always think in French first." He laughed. "That's your problem. You need to stop translating. You need to start thinking in English." Jake was right. But how? Step 1. Surrounding myself with English. The first thing I did was change my environment. Even though I lived in the US, I realized I was still living in French. My phone was in French. My Netflix shows? Mostly in French. Even my to-do lists were in French. So I made a decision. I switched everything to English. I changed my phone settings. I started watching shows in English, without subtitles. I listened to English podcasts every morning. I even started writing my shopping lists in English. At first it felt weird, but little by little, my brain started adjusting. Step 2. Talking to myself in English. One afternoon, I was walking home from class, and I had an idea. What if I started thinking in English all the time? So instead of thinking, "Je vais faire mes devoirs." Quand je rentre chez moi, I forced myself to think, "I'm going to do my homework when I get home." At first, it felt unnatural. My brain wanted to switch back to French, but after a few days, it got easier. Step 3. Using simple sentences 1. Thing I noticed? My French thoughts were too complicated. When I tried to translate them, the English didn't always make sense. So I started thinking in short, simple sentences. For example, instead of thinking, "J'espère qu'il ne pleuvra pas plus tard car je dois aller au magasin," I thought, "I hope it doesn't rain later. I need to go to the store." Short, simple, direct, and it worked. Step 4. Describing everything around me. I started a new habit. Whenever I was in a coffee shop, I looked around and thought in English. The barista is making coffee. That man is reading a book. This coffee smells good. At first, I had to force my brain to do it, but over time, it became automatic. Step 5. Speaking without fear of mistakes. One of the biggest things that slowed me down? My fear of making mistakes. Every time I spoke, I worried about grammar. I wanted my sentences to be perfect. But then, I remembered something my English professor told me. Even native speakers make mistakes. She was right. I had heard my American friends say things like, "Me and my friend went to the store," which isn't grammatically correct. But no one cared. That's when I realized fluency is more important than perfection. So, I stopped overthinking. If I made a mistake, I kept going. And something amazing happened. I started feeling confident. The turning point, a few months later, something incredible happened. I was in a group discussion in class. My professor asked a question, and before I even realized it, I answered. No translating, no hesitation. The words came out naturally. That's when I knew. My brain had finally switched to English. The real test, public speaking, even after that moment, I still had one big fear. Public speaking. Speaking in front of a class is scary for anyone. But for me, it was even harder. I worried that under pressure I would go back to thinking in French. So I prepared differently. Instead of writing my speech in French and translating, I wrote everything directly in English. I practiced out loud. I recorded myself and listened back. On the day of the presentation, I was nervous. But something incredible happened. I started speaking, and for the first time, I wasn't thinking about French at all. The words just flowed. I wasn't just speaking English. I was thinking in English. No fear, no hesitation. Overcoming challenges, of course, my journey wasn't perfect. There were days when I felt frustrated. Some nights when I was tired, my brain wanted to switch back to French. And sometimes I still got stuck on certain words. But instead of getting frustrated, I wrote them down. Every night before bed, I reviewed them. And little by little, those words became part of my natural thoughts. Another challenge? Fast native speakers. At first, I felt overwhelmed. But then I developed a strategy. Instead of trying to understand every single word, I focused on the context. For example, if someone said, "Hey, wanna grab a bite?" I didn't stop to think, what does grab a bite mean? I understood from the situation. They were inviting me to eat. This mindset helped me stop overanalyzing and just go with the flow. The moment I knew I had changed. A few months after my journey started, something funny happened. I was walking across campus, texting a friend, and then I noticed something. I had typed my entire message in English without even thinking about French. I stopped. For the first time, my brain wasn't translating. It wasn't hesitating. It had fully switched to English. You can do it too. Thinking in English isn't about being perfect. It's about making English a natural part of your life. If you're struggling right now, don't worry. It takes time, but it's possible. Just remember, stop translating in your head. Surround yourself with English every day. Talk to yourself in English. Use simple sentences and grow from there. Accept that mistakes are part of learning. If you keep practicing, one day you'll realize that your brain has made the switch, just like mine did. The power of patience and persistence after. I realized my brain had started thinking in English. I understood something important. Learning a language isn't just about words. It's about changing the way you think. It's about consistency. It's about pushing past fear. And if you keep going one day, without even realizing it, you'll think in English, naturally. The journey never stops. After that moment, I felt a new level of confidence. But I also knew something important. The journey never stops. Thinking in English wasn't just a goal I had reached. It was something I had to keep practicing. If I stopped surrounding myself with English, if I stopped challenging my mind, my brain might slowly go back to French first. So I made a decision. I would keep pushing myself every day. And that's when I realized consistency is the secret. Thinking in English isn't a one-time switch. It's not like flipping a button and suddenly your brain works differently forever. It's a habit. And like any habit, you have to keep doing it until it becomes natural. So, I created a system to keep improving. Daily exposure. I listen to one podcast in English every morning. Speaking practice. I spoke to myself in English while doing small tasks. Writing in English. I started keeping a journal. Only in English. Reading in English every night. I read at least one article or a few pages of a book in English. Little by little, English became my default setting. And then, something even bigger happened. My first dream in English. One night, I had a dream. In my dream, I was talking to my friend, Jake. We were laughing, having a conversation in English. I didn't realize it at first. But when I woke up, I sat up in bed and smiled. This was it. I had dreamed in English for the first time. It was proof that my brain had made the full shift. I was no longer just speaking English. I was living in English, even in my subconscious mind. Helping others on the same journey. Once I had trained my brain to think in English, something changed. I started noticing other people who struggled just like I had. Friends, classmates, even people online. So many learners were stuck in the translation trap. So, I started sharing my experience. I told them, if you want to be fluent, stop translating. Immerse yourself in English. Make English a part of your everyday life. And soon I realized, this wasn't just my story. This was a journey so many people were going through, and if I could do it, so could they. Final thoughts. The power of small steps. If you're trying to think in English, I want you to remember something. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to understand every word. You don't have to be afraid of mistakes. All you need to do is take small steps every day. Change your phone to English. Watch movies. And listen to music in English. Narrate your thoughts in English. Speak even if it's just to yourself. Be patient. Keep going. One day, without even realizing it, you'll wake up and English will feel natural. It won't be a struggle anymore. It will just be part of you. And that's when you'll know. You're not just speaking English. You're thinking in English. And that changes everything. The magic of thinking. In English once. I started thinking in English naturally. Everything in my life changed. Conversations became faster and easier. I felt more confident speaking with native speakers. I no longer felt exhausted after a long discussion, and most importantly, I felt free. Before, English felt like a second layer, something I had to process before using. But now, English wasn't just something I spoke. It was how I thought. This change didn't just improve my language skills. It changed the way I saw myself. I was no longer Lena, the girl who struggles with English. I was Lena, the fluent English speaker. And the best part? I didn't have to think about French first anymore. How my life changed. After thinking in English, after training my brain to think in English, I started to notice unexpected benefits. Making new friends became easier. Before, I was afraid to start conversations in English. I worried about my grammar. I worried about sounding awkward. Now, I could jump into conversations naturally. I made friends from different countries, people I never would have spoken to before. I got better opportunities. One day, I saw a flyer for an internship program in New York. Before, I would have doubted myself. My English isn't good enough, but this time, I applied. During the interview, I didn't have to translate in my head. I spoke naturally, confidently. And guess what? I got the internship. Traveling became more fun. Few months later, I went on a trip to Los Angeles with my friends. Before, I used to get nervous ordering food at restaurants. Now, I could talk to anyone. I even started conversations with locals. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged. What I wish I knew earlier. Looking back, I realized that there were a few things I wish someone had told me earlier. Fluency isn't about speaking fast. It's about speaking naturally. You don't need to understand every word, just the idea. It's okay to make mistakes. Native speakers do too. You don't learn a language. you train your brain to use it. If I had known these things earlier, I would have stopped translating in my head much sooner, and I wouldn't have wasted so much time being afraid of mistakes. The final push, thinking in English. Every day, even after I became fluent, I made sure to keep practicing. I kept listening to English every day. I kept talking to myself in English. I kept challenging myself with new words and ideas. And the more I did it, the more natural it became. Now I don't have to force myself to think in English. It just happens. And that's when I knew I had completely trained my mind. You can do it too if you're reading this and thinking, but I still struggle to think in English. I want you to know something. You can do this. It won't happen overnight. It takes time. But if you follow these steps one day, you'll wake up and realize you're not translating anymore. You're not hesitating anymore. You're thinking in English. And when that happens, your entire world will change. So don't give up. Keep going. Because the day you start thinking in English is the day you become truly fluent. The power of patience and persistence. After I realized that my brain had started thinking in English, I felt like I had unlocked a superpower. But there was something important I had to remember. Fluency isn't a final destination. Even native speakers continue to improve their language skills throughout their lives. So I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't stop learning. I wouldn't stop growing, because language is alive, and if I wanted to stay fluent, I had to keep feeding my mind with English every day. That's when I discovered something truly powerful. The key to fluency isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent. The challenges never stop, but neither should you even. After I started thinking in English, I still face challenges. Sometimes, I came across new words I didn't know. There were moments when I forgot a word in the middle of a conversation. And sometimes, when I was tired or stressed, my brain wanted to switch back to French. At first, I got frustrated. Why is this still happening? I asked myself. But then, I remembered something important. Even native speakers forget words. Even native speakers struggle to express their thoughts sometimes. So instead of feeling bad, I focused on solutions. If I didn't know a word, I would describe it in simple English. If I forgot a word, I would stay calm and let my brain find another way to explain it. If I felt my brain switching back to French, I would slow down, take a deep breath, and refocus. And you know what? The more I faced these challenges, the easier they became. I learned that the real secret to fluency is not being afraid of difficulty. The power of real conversations. One of the biggest shifts happened when I started having real conversations with native speakers. Before, I used to avoid deep discussions because I was afraid of making mistakes. But now I realized that the more I talked, the better I got. I started asking people more questions. I joined English-speaking groups and online communities. I practiced explaining complex ideas in simple English, and something incredible happened. People understood me. They didn't care about small grammar mistakes. They cared about what I had to say. That's when I finally stopped being afraid of speaking. Because fluency isn't about knowing every rule. It's about being able to express yourself freely. How? Thinking in English changed my mindset. Before, I saw English as a barrier, something that separated me from native speakers. But once I started thinking in English, I saw it as a bridge, something that connected me to the world. I started watching motivational videos in English. I read self-improvement books in English. I even started writing down my dreams and goals in English. And guess what? This didn't just help my English, it helped me. Because when you learn to think in a new language, you also learn to see the world in a new way. English wasn't just a language anymore. It was a tool that helped me grow, learn, and express myself in ways I never imagined. The final test. Dreaming in English. Again, one night, something happened that proved to me that my mind had fully switched. I had another dream in English. But this time, it wasn't just a normal conversation. I was giving a speech. In the dream, I was standing in front of a crowd, talking about my journey, about how I had trained my mind to think in English. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't hesitating. I was speaking naturally, fluently, confidently. And when I woke up, I knew something for sure. English wasn't just a language. I learned it had become a part of me. Your turn. Start thinking in English today. If you've read this far, I want to tell you something. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know every word. You don't need to be afraid of mistakes. All you need to do is start. Surround yourself with English. Talk to yourself in English. Keep it simple. Be patient. And most importantly, don't stop. One day, just like me, you'll wake up and realize you're not just speaking English. You're thinking in English. And when that happens, your whole world will change. Keep going. Fluency is closer than you think. The journey of thinking in English never ends once. I had trained my mind to think in English. I felt like I had achieved something huge, but I quickly realized something important. This wasn't the end of the journey. It was just the beginning. Because fluency is not a destination. It's a skill, a habit, something you must keep using and improving every single day. The moment you stop practicing, your brain will try to go back to its old patterns, and I didn't want that to happen. So I made a decision. I would continue challenging my brain in English, no matter what. And that's when I discovered a new level of learning, one that went beyond just fluency. learning to express myself deeply in English. At first, my goal was simple. Stop translating. Think in English. But once I achieved that, I realized I still had more to learn. I could think in English, but could I express deep emotions in English? I could hold conversations, but could I tell stories with feeling? I could describe simple things, but could I explain my dreams and fears in English? This was the next level. Because true fluency isn't just about words, it's about expression. So, I started challenging myself in new ways. I practiced telling personal stories in English. I wrote down my thoughts and feelings in an English journal. I had deep conversations with friends about life, goals, and emotions. And at first, it was hard. I didn't always know the right words. Sometimes I had to pause and search for a way to explain what I felt. But over time, my ability to express myself grew. And suddenly, English was more than just a language I used. It became a language I lived in. Fluency is about confidence, not perfection. One of the biggest lessons I learned on this journey was this. Fluency is not about knowing every word. It's about being comfortable with what you do know. Think about it. Even native speakers forget words sometimes. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes. Even native speakers pause and think before they speak. So why was I trying to be perfect? That's when I made a big decision. I would focus on confidence, not perfection. And that mindset changed everything. I stopped apologizing for my English. I stopped feeling embarrassed when I made a mistake. I started enjoying conversations instead of worrying about them. And guess what? The more confident I became, the more fluent I felt. Because fluency is not about speaking without mistakes. It's about speaking without fear. The mindset shift that changed everything. I used to think that speaking English fluently meant I had to memorize thousands of words. But that wasn't true. The real secret? Mindset. The way you think about English affects the way you speak it. Here's what I changed. Before. I have to translate everything perfectly in my head. Now, I will express myself in simple English first and improve over time. Before, I need a big vocabulary to sound smart. Now, I can say a lot with simple words just like native speakers do. Before, what if I make a mistake and people judge me? Now, mistakes mean I'm learning. Even native speakers make them. Once I made these shifts in my thinking, everything became easier. And that's when I realized something incredible. The way you think determines the way you speak. So if you want to think in English, you have to stop worrying, stop hesitating, and start trusting yourself. My biggest breakthrough, English became my default language one day. Something happened that proved to me that I had reached a new level of fluency. I was writing a message to my friend in France, and without even realizing it, I wrote the whole message in English. Not because I wanted to, not because I was trying to practice, but because my brain naturally defaulted to English first. I stopped. I stared at my phone, and then I smiled. This was it. This was the final proof that I had completely switched my thinking to English. And that moment showed me something powerful. When you train your brain the right way, fluency isn't just possible, it's inevitable. You can do this too. Start today if you're reading this and thinking, this sounds great, but can I really think in English too? Let me tell you, yes, you can. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know every word. You don't have to be afraid of mistakes. All you have to do is start. Start by surrounding yourself with English. Start by talking to yourself in English. Start by changing your small daily habits. Because thinking in English isn't something that happens overnight. It happens in small moments, every single day. And one day, just like me, you'll realize you're not translating anymore. You're not hesitating anymore. You're not just speaking English. You're thinking in English. And that changes everything. So start today. Keep going. Fluency is closer than you think. The secret to mastering English, a lifetime commitment once. I realized I had fully switched to thinking in English. I felt an incredible sense of accomplishment. But here's what I quickly learned. Language. Learning never truly ends. Even after achieving fluency, there is always more to discover, more to improve, and more to explore. That's why I made a promise to myself. I would never stop growing in English. Because the moment you stop practicing, you stop improving. And I wanted to keep getting better and better every day. So I started setting new goals. I wanted to improve my pronunciation. I wanted to sound more natural, like a native speaker. I wanted to learn advanced expressions and idioms. I wanted to build an even stronger vocabulary. And most importantly, I wanted to make English a permanent part of my identity. Step 1. Mastering pronunciation. Even though I was thinking in English, I knew there were still small pronunciation mistakes that made me sound like a learner instead of a native speaker, and I wanted to fix that. So, I made pronunciation a daily habit. I listened carefully to native speakers and repeated what they said. I recorded myself speaking and compared my pronunciation. I practiced difficult sounds over and over until they felt natural. 1. Of the most effective techniques I discovered was shadowing, listening to an English speaker and repeating their words at the same time, copying their tone, rhythm, and pronunciation. At first, it was challenging, but the more I practiced, the better I got. And slowly, my pronunciation became clearer, smoother, and more natural. Step 2. Sounding more natural in conversations fluency. Isn't just about knowing words, it's about knowing how to use them naturally. So I started paying attention to the way native speakers actually speak in real life. I noticed that they don't always speak in full, perfect sentences. They use a lot of connected speech, words blend together. They use idioms, slang, and casual expressions that textbooks don't teach. So I started studying real conversations from movies, TV shows, and YouTube videos. Learned phrases like, "What's up?" instead of, "How are you?" "I'll give it a shot," instead of, "I will try." "No worries," instead of, "Don't worry about it." And the more I used these natural expressions, the more I felt like I was speaking real English, not just textbook English. Step 3. Learning advanced expressions and idioms. After mastering basic fluency, I wanted to take my English to the next level. That's when I started exploring idioms. It's a piece of cake. It's easy. Phrasal verbs. Run into someone. Meet someone unexpectedly. Slang words. That's lit. That's amazing. At first, these expressions felt strange and unfamiliar, but I started learning them one by one and using them in my daily conversations. And over time, my English started sounding more natural, more fluent, and more expressive. Step 4. Building. An even stronger vocabulary. Even though I could express myself clearly, I wanted to expand my vocabulary so I could express myself more precisely. So, I developed a powerful habit. Every day, I learned 5 new words, but I didn't just memorize them. I used them in sentences, conversations, and writing until they became a natural part of my vocabulary. And I made sure to learn words that were useful and relevant to my life, not just random words from a list, because vocabulary isn't about how many words you know, it's about how well you can use them in real situations. Step 5. Thinking in English at a higher level. At this point, I had trained my brain to think in English. Naturally, but I wanted to challenge myself even more. So, I started practicing critical thinking in English. I read news articles in English and formed my own opinions about them. I listened to podcasts and thought deeply about the topics discussed. I watched TED Talks and asked myself, what do I think about this? And the more I engaged with English at a deeper level, the more it became a part of my thought process, decision-making, and daily life. That's when I knew I wasn't just fluent, I was living in English. The day I knew I had completely transformed. 1. 8. I was sitting in a cafe reading an English book. I finished a page and suddenly realized I hadn't translated anything. I hadn't struggled. I hadn't even thought about the fact that I was reading in English. It felt as natural as breathing. That was the moment I truly understood. I had mastered English, not just as a language, but as a way of thinking. Your next steps. Make English a part of your identity. If you want to think in English, here's what you need to remember. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. It's not about memorizing words. It's about using them. It is not about avoiding mistakes. It's about learning from them. Fluency isn't just a skill, it's a lifestyle. So, don't just study English. Live in English. Think in English. Express yourself in English. Because one day, just like me, you'll wake up and realize you're not just speaking English, you're thinking in English. And when that happens, your world will open up in ways you never imagined. So start today. Keep going. And never stop improving. Thinking in English, the journey never ends. After reaching the point where my thoughts flowed naturally in English, I had a realization. This wasn't the final level. It was just another milestone. Because learning a language is like climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the more you see, and the more you realize there's still so much more to explore. That's when I decided I would never stop improving. I would never stop challenging myself. Because English wasn't just a language to me anymore. It was a part of who I was. How I took my English to the next level even. Though I was fluent, I knew there were ways to become even better, so I focused on speaking faster and more naturally, understanding different accents, thinking critically in English, mastering humor and storytelling. Here's how I did it. Step 1. Speaking. Faster and more naturally. Even though I was fluent, I noticed that native speakers spoke faster than I did. So I needed to train my brain to keep up with real, fast-paced conversations. Here's what helped me. Listening to fast conversations. I started watching TV shows and YouTube videos at normal speed without slowing them down. At first, I missed words, but over time my brain adapted. Practicing speed speaking. I took simple sentences and practiced saying them faster and faster until I could say them naturally. Thinking on my feet, I started doing improvisation, exercises, where I picked a topic and spoke nonstop for 1 minute. No stopping, no hesitating. Slowly, my English became faster, smoother, and more natural. Step 2. Understanding. Different accents. One day, I was watching a British show and realized I couldn't understand half of what they were saying. That's when I knew if I wanted to be truly fluent, I needed to understand all types of English. So I exposed myself to as many accents as possible. British English. I watched BBC interviews and British TV shows like Sherlock. Australian English. I listened to Australian YouTubers. Indian English. I followed English news channels from India. African and Caribbean English. I listened to interviews and podcasts featuring diverse speakers. At first, it was hard, but I trained my brain to focus on context instead of individual words. And soon, I could understand English speakers from all over the world, no matter their accent. Step 3. Thinking critically in English fluency isn't just about speaking. It's also about thinking deeply in English. So I started challenging myself. Reading and analyzing. Instead of just reading books, I asked myself, what's the deeper meaning here? Debating ideas. I joined English discussion groups and talked about politics, culture, and life. Writing my thoughts. Every night, I wrote about my day, my thoughts, and my goals in English. This helped me develop not just fluency, but intelligence in English. Because when you can express complex ideas in English, you're not just fluent, you're a true thinker. Step 4. Mastering humor and storytelling. One day, I told a joke in English, and nobody laughed. That's when I realized, understanding humor in another language is a whole new level of fluency. So I studied how native speakers joke and tell stories. I watched stand-up comedians and analyzed how they delivered jokes. I practiced telling funny personal stories in English. I listened to how people use sarcasm and wordplay, and over time, I didn't just understand English. I could make people laugh in English. That's when I knew I wasn't just fluent, I was completely comfortable in English. The moment I knew I had mastered English, one day, something unexpected happened. I was dreaming. And in my dream, everyone was speaking English. I woke up and realized my subconscious had fully switched to English. I didn't just think in English when I was awake. I even dreamed in English. And that's when I knew English wasn't just a language I learned. It had become a part of my mind, my identity, my life. Your journey to thinking in English starts now. If you've read this far, I know one thing about you. You're serious about mastering English, and I promise you, you can do this. Here's what you need to remember. Stop translating in your head. Immerse yourself in English every day. Talk to yourself in English. Make English part of your identity. It won't happen overnight. But if you keep practicing, one day, just like me, you'll realize you're not just speaking English. You're thinking, feeling, and even dreaming in English. And that's when you'll know you've truly mastered the language. So start today. Keep going, and never stop improving. Because fluency is not the end. It's just the beginning. The endless journey of English mastery once. I realized that English had become a natural part of my life. A new question appeared in my mind. What's next? I had spent years training my brain to think in English, and I had reached fluency. But I knew that language learning is a never-ending journey. Even native speakers keep learning new words, new expressions, and new ways of thinking every day. So, I decided that I wouldn't just stop at fluency. I wanted to keep growing, keep improving, and keep mastering English at a higher level. Step 5. Thinking in English with emotion fluency isn't just about speaking correctly. It's about expressing yourself fully, with emotions, with passion, with confidence. At first, I noticed something strange. Even though I could have conversations in English, I still felt more comfortable expressing my deep emotions in my first language. If I was excited, angry, or sad, my thoughts automatically switched back to Spanish. That's when I realized I needed to train myself to feel in English. So I started practicing describing my emotions in English. Instead of just saying I'm sad, I learned to say I feel overwhelmed or I feel disappointed. Reacting naturally in English. When I was surprised, I forced myself to say, "No way," instead of my usual Spanish reaction. Writing my personal thoughts in English, I started keeping a journal in English, writing about my feelings, my goals, and my dreams. Slowly, English stopped feeling like a foreign language to me. It became the language of my emotions, my thoughts, and my personal experiences. And when that happened, my fluency reached a whole new level. Step 6. Learning. To think in English under pressure. I realized that even though I could think in English when I was alone, I sometimes struggled when I was under pressure. For example, in job interviews, my brain would suddenly freeze, and I would struggle to find the right words. In fast conversations, I sometimes panicked and lost my train of thought. When speaking to authority figures, I felt nervous and self-conscious. I needed to train my brain to think in English even in high-pressure situations. So, I started doing mental training exercises, practicing spontaneous speech. I would choose a random topic and force myself to talk about it for 2 minutes without stopping. Simulating high-pressure situations. I practiced answering interview questions in English as if I were in a real job interview. Role-playing conversations. I imagined difficult situations, like asking my professor for an extension, and practiced how I would respond in English. At first, I still felt nervous, but over time, my brain adapted. And soon I was able to think in English even under pressure, even in difficult situations, even when it really mattered. Step 7. Thinking in English. While dreaming big one day, I realized something incredible. When I imagined my future, my goals, my dreams, my success, I was thinking about them in English. And that's when I truly understood something powerful. Language isn't just about communication. It's about the way we see the world. When I started thinking in English, my world expanded. I started watching international content, reading global books, and learning ideas that I never would have encountered in my first language. I started imagining my career, my future, and my success in English. And that's when I realized thinking in English isn't just about learning a language. It's about changing your mindset. The final test, living completely in English, I had reached fluency. I was thinking, speaking, and even feeling in English. But I wanted to push myself even further. So, I gave myself a challenge. For 1 full month, I would live my entire life only in English. I only read books in English. I only watched TV in English. I only wrote in English. I even dreamed in English. It was the most intense immersion experience of my life. And by the end of the month, something incredible had happened. I no longer needed to try to think in English. I was just doing it, effortlessly, naturally, all the time. That's when I knew I had completely transformed my mind into an English-speaking mind. Your turn. How to make English your second nature. You want to think in English effortlessly. Here's what you need to do. Step 1. Stop translating in your head. Step 2. Surround yourself with English every day. Step 3. Talk to yourself in English, even in your mind. Step 4. Learn to express your emotions in English. Step 5. Train your brain to think in English under pressure. Step 6. Start dreaming and planning your future in English. Step 7. Live completely in English, even if just for 1 month. It won't happen overnight, but if you practice every day, one day you'll wake up and realize you're not just speaking English, you're thinking, living, and experiencing the world in English. And when that happens, you'll know you didn't just learn English, you became fluent for life. So start today and never stop improving. Your journey to true fluency starts now.